In part 1 of Lizard Brain for Couples, I introduced concepts from the triune brain, internal family systems, and transactional analysis. In this part 2, I will add in information from polyvagal theory and Pete Walker's complex PTSD with tips for communication and a look at the patterns of how conflict arises between couples due to the prefrontal cortex being shut down and being in lizard brain. Transactional analysis recommends recognizing the ego states at play. Identify whether you or your partner are communicating from parent, critical or nurturing, adult or child, adaptive or free, ego states. If the interaction is escalating, check if you've been drawn into a parent-child dynamic. One example of a parent-child dynamic would be one partner feeling emotional and wanting comfort, but not sharing that, and the other being critical and saying something like, "You're being dramatic, stop crying." Another example could involve one partner attempting to be in the nurturing parent role, but the other partner being in a child state that's fearful. "I'm trying to help," but the other person is feeling, "I don't trust you." Another example of mismatched ego states might be one person being in an adult state, "I just want a plan," so appearing logical, while the other partner is in a rebellious child state. "I don't want to be responsible. Just leave me alone," they're thinking. Shift to the adult ego state. Pause and ask yourself, what are the facts? What would be the most logical, constructive response? Avoid emotional reactivity and instead focus on gathering information and seeking solutions. If someone says, "You never listen to me," from a child state, instead of responding defensively, you could say, "I hear that you're upset. Can you help me understand what I missed?" Cross transactions consciously. If the other person is engaging from a parent or child ego state, respond from adult instead of mirroring their state. If they say, "You're always so irresponsible," from a critical parent state, avoid reacting from the rebellious child. "Well, you're always controlling." Instead, respond, adult to adult. "I'd like to understand what I did that seems irresponsible to you." Use the "I'm okay, you're okay" approach. Remind yourself that both of you have worth and should be treated with mutual respect. Instead of a power struggle, focus on collaboration. If a disagreement arises, say, "We both want to solve this problem. How can we work together on it?" Avoid psychological games. Be aware of the drama triangle roles of victim, persecutor, and rescuer, and avoid getting pulled into them. If you notice a game starting, disrupt it by shifting to adult logic. Example, if someone tries to make you feel guilty, "After all I've done for you," instead of feeling obligated or defensive, respond from adult, "I appreciate what you've done. How can we move forward from here?" Here we have an example of the drama triangle. The victim is thinking, "Nobody listens to me." The rescuer is saying, "I'll fix everything." And the persecutor is criticizing with the comment, "You're too needy." Shift to the empowerment triangle roles. The previous victim, now empowered, can think, "I can make choices." The previous rescuer becomes a coach, "I support without enabling." And the previous persecutor becomes a challenger, "I push for growth, not harm." Use timeouts when needed. If emotions are escalating, take a break and return when both parties can engage from adult mode. "I want to have a productive conversation. Let's take a break and revisit this in an hour." And remember, it takes about 20 seconds to flip your lid, but 20 minutes or longer to reconnect your prefrontal cortex. Now let's take a look at some interaction patterns blending internal family systems and transactional analysis, where each partner has a manager or parent state, an adult self-energy state, a firefighter, we could perhaps call teen state, an exiled child containing trauma, but also free and creative spontaneity. The ideal healthy interaction state is adult-to-adult interactions in romantic relationships, where both have their prefrontal cortex available and they're in their self-energy and available for ventral vagal co-regulation. Also, each party is responsible for their own child states. This is the I'm okay, you're okay state, where both parties have access to self-energy, which can be described with a number of adjectives started with C: calm, curious, compassionate, with clarity, able to be creative, connected, and co-regulating. When both partners are in their manager state or anxious protector or parent state, this usually indicates being triggered into fight or flight, and it involves cutting off the frontal cortex. Therefore, we lose the access to having filters and say things we don't mean. Here's a depiction of an interaction between one partner in the parent state and the other partner in the teen state, or we could say manager to firefighter or anxious protector to freeze protector, where the person in the manager state is in a place of being critical and controlling perhaps, and the firefighter is using an addiction here to manage their feelings or medicate their feelings. And we could also describe this as a family systems dynamic of over-functioner, under-functioner, where one partner becomes more taking care of things and the other one is being less responsible. You also have the dynamic where one partner is being in a manager state and the other one in an exile state. So the individual in the manager state, parent ego state, is critical, controlling, or perhaps rescuing and taking over responsibility for the other partner's child state or exile state, in which that person can be open to that or not. Here's a pattern where both partners are in a firefighter state, essentially teen to teen, being irresponsible together, what might be called co-addiction, and sometimes a fawn response on one partner's case, and that can be that cliche of if you can't beat them, join them, where one person has an addiction and the other one takes it on. Now let's look at some more tips from internal family systems. First, self-leadership. Lead from your core self. Before addressing a relationship conflict, take a moment to check in with your parts, asking, who inside me is feeling activated? Protector, exile, firefighter. Self-led communication reduces reactivity and defensiveness. Recognize and speak for your parts, not from them. Instead of saying, you always dismiss me, blended with your wounded part, try, a part of me feels dismissed when you don't respond. Can we talk about that? This helps de-escalate conflict and invites curiosity rather than defensiveness. You can befriend each other's protective parts. When your partner's defensive, ask, what might their protector be trying to do? For example, if your partner shuts down, their protector might be shielding an exile that fears rejection. Instead of pushing them to engage, acknowledge their need for safety first. Shift from blame to understanding. Instead of seeing each other as the problem, recognize protectors at play. Old view, you never listen. Internal family systems view, I notice my part gets really anxious when I feel unheard. Can we check in about this? Identify the cycle, not just the incident. Many relationship issues are recurring cycles of protectors interacting. For example, one partner withdraws and the other protests louder, resulting in more withdrawal. Instead of reacting, pause and name the cycle. I think we're in our usual pattern where I chase and you retreat. How can we approach this differently? Cultivate compassion for each other's wounds. Every exile or wounded part has a history, and when triggered, ask, where did this feeling first show up for me? What does my partner's reaction remind me of from their past? Understanding childhood wounds helps couples extend compassion rather than reacting defensively. Repair and reconnect with self-led apologies. Apologize from self-energy, not from obligation. For example, a non-self-led response is, fine, I'm sorry, happy now? Self-led sounds more like, I see that a part of me got defensive and I wasn't really hearing you. I'm sorry for that. Can we try again? Slow down and self-soothe before reacting. Use mindful pauses when triggered and take deep breaths. Name your internal experience and avoid reacting from protector parts. I feel myself getting defensive. I need a moment to check in with myself before continuing. Prioritize self-connection to strengthen your relationship. Strong relationships come from two people who care for their internal world. Encourage practices like journaling conversations with your parts, self-check-ins before discussing big topics, and recognizing when you're leading from self versus parts. More tips will be provided in video part 3. Thank you for listening.